Hello, everyone, and welcome on into the Betting Pros podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Viola, and joining me for the entirety of football season, none other than the king of content, the sensei of soaps, the podcast power listener, and long-suffering Cowboys fan, the Oracle himself, Matt Freedman. Matt, how are you doing today?
That was quite the introduction. I don't even remember what my introduction was for you last year. Do you remember what it was?
Let's see. It was the Titan of tomato sauce, the connoisseur of pasta. There was something else in there, and long-suffering Jets fan.
Long-suffering Jets fan. Yeah.
Sidekick at the controls, connoisseur of pasta, Titan of tomato sauce. But now the tables have turned. I am no longer the sidekick. Now you kind of are the one in the sidecar here. I am the captain now, Matt.
That's true. The turns table.
How the turntables.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for correcting me. I couldn't even screw up the screw up.
Well, today, Matt, we're going to be talking about some totals, win totals, how to evaluate numbers, how to find value in them, and we're going to make some predictions as well. At the end of the show, you and I, we're going to face off with a little bit of a win totals draft here, and we'll come back at the end of the season and see how wrong we were. But first, to talk totals with us, guys, please welcome back to the show, making a return appearance here, none other than my good buddy, Jeff Parles.
I thought you were the Titan of Tortellini, actually, Tom. I thought that was your nickname.
Well, it could have been, but honestly, Tortellini not quite up there with Penne for me. Penne is always at the top of the power rankings. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm great, guys. We were talking before the show. We're at that point of the calendar. We're about 2-3 days away from being like, oh my God, we are almost at the end of the summer abyss. And we're almost at football season where we're going to be waiting on some great week 0 games in college football. We're almost through the preseason in the NFL. But it's just awesome to be with the guys and talking some win totals today, because you really got to start hopping in. If you've already missed the boat on some, there are still some out there that are quite good.
It's true. Camp is finally done. Preseason is underway, and we're starting to get what is admittedly a flawed look at some of these teams. Guys, how much are you weighing these preseason looks in your evaluations versus dismissing some of this data? Like the rumors about the Patriots and how their offense is just playing abysmal at camp. How much are you putting stock into these when you're making your win total picks? And how much are you kind of ignoring some of this preseason buzz?
So I would say this: you just have to be able to filter out the BS and the non-BS, which is very hard at this time of the year because it's practices, it's preseason games where half the teams have their starters play for a few series last week. I'm pretty sure Sean McVay has sent Stafford and all of his starters to Laguna Beach for the next month and is not even bothering anything with that. But, it's interesting. From a betting perspective, I don't take much from the preseason unless if it's like a rookie. Let's take Brian Robinson, for example, in Washington, where I think Brian Robinson, based off the camp reports, based off his performance in game 1 of the preseason, we might see more of Brian Robinson, and maybe he's worth a bet down the board in an offensive rookie of the year. And Matt would know better than me, from a fantasy perspective, maybe Brian Robinson, who is a fringe guy in a fantasy draft, maybe you want to take him a little bit earlier than you were planning on possibly taking him, instead of hoping he gets through the waiver wire after the draft for you. So that's really the only things I really look at are rookies that are overachieving, which sometimes that doesn't work. Not everyone is like Victor Cruz back in the day, Tom, as we know, but you just can't overreact to preseason. Some teams that are going to be really good are going to look like crap, and some teams that are going to be really bad are going to look very good in the preseason.
It's true. I'm pretty sure the Lions went the 0-6.
They were undefeated. They were undefeated that preseason. So were the Browns too.
Yeah,
they went winless.
And rookie hype. I mean, we're all familiar with it, especially from last year. Remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch a football and everybody was writing him off as a bust? How'd that go? Matt, how about you? What are some of the things that you look at? Are you weighing preseason hype? Are you completely dismissing it? Obviously, the answer lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, in terms of what happens in the actual preseason games, I'm not focusing on that all that much, with the exception of maybe like how Kenny Pickett plays, so that might give us some insight into whether he might start in week 1 if he actually, wins the starting job or not. And so, that has some impact there. But for the most part, it's nothing that about the games. It's about some of the beat reports that we get, and not highlight plays on Twitter or anything like that, but, established long-term beat reporters and what they are seeing. And, in certain key situations. So for instance, if there's something new, like the Patriots offense, right? Or if there's something new like the Vikings offense, situations where there's uncertainty, if we get multiple reporters pointing in one direction, then I would probably, not always, but I'd be inclined to make a tweak to my my seasonal power ratings. And because I'm using my power ratings to drive my projected win totals, there would be fallout from that. But for the most part, you're taking note of things. You're literally, at least me, making notes in my spreadsheet to say like, okay, track this when the season starts. See if what we have heard in camp is something that actually lines up with what we're seeing now in week 1. But I'm not making too many movements on any camp news. And when they are movements, they're very short movements.
And now, guys, let's dive into some actual win total discussions here. But the number one thing that people need to know when they're trying to bet win totals, what's the process like? What is it that you're doing when you're evaluating these teams and getting you to your conclusions of, I like this number? Jeff, when you sit down and you say, I want to evaluate some win totals, I want to make some of these season bets, what's the first thing that you're looking at when you're going to these teams and trying to pick out a number that you like?
So, Tom, you may think this is partially psychotic, the way that I do this. And I do this very differently because there are people that are model-based, and there are some things that I'm model-based, but the NFL, I'm just not. Just not the way that I've bet it over the years. I take this, whenever that schedule is released in April or May or whenever the hell it's released, I look at it at first, just look through, all right, these are going to be tough stretches for some teams. These are teams that may have easier stretches through the year. And then actually, I did this 2 weeks ago before the preseason, and then I'll do one more version that's a little more sturdy after the preseason games are done. I will go through every single regular season game, and I will make a pick on every single regular season game before the season. That's how I look at this. And look, there are some teams that, again, like, let's take the Chiefs for a second. The way that I went through them, I had them with one go through. I had them with 10. I imagine when I have to go through a little bit, I'll have them at 11. Their win total's 10.5. So that obviously would not trigger a bet for me, but they're one of those teams that you monitor for maybe an in-season win total because their first 7 games are absolutely horrendous. They're so hard the first 7 weeks of the season. So maybe you look at that and say, oh, maybe if the Chiefs are like 3-4 after 7 games, maybe I'm going to look for a in-season win total. So that's part of the reason that I go through all these games where, all right, there are some that I know I'm going to have to take preseason, but there are going to be some teams that I look at and like, this team's going to be good to attack for an in-season over. Like Denver last year, they the Giants, the Jags, and the Jets, their win total went to 10. They won those 3 games against those 3 horrible teams. Easy under. They didn't even get to their preseason total. So that's part of the reason that I go through every single game, every single team schedule, because now in the climate we're in betting-wise, it's not just preseason win totals. It's in-season win totals that you can really attack. And knowing a team's schedule, that's very important going into a year.
Matt, what say you? What does your process start off with?
Yeah, I like that analysis that Jeff had there of looking at the actual week-to-week schedule for each team. I have a piece at Betting Pros that does that, looks at some of the harder stretches, easier stretches of the season. And yeah, I think that's pretty sharp. If there's a team that you think you're close on, but maybe not quite there, look to bet them at an opportune time in the season based on their schedule. In terms of, before the season starts, trying to think about the bets that I want to make. I mentioned earlier, I have, a power ratings system. I have a model that I've created. Model, I'm using, air quotes there. It's a spreadsheet. I'm not doing anything fancy. It's a multicolored spreadsheet, in all fairness to myself, but it's a spreadsheet.
You're using that laptop that smokes when you have 2 Google tabs to run all those calculations.
Yeah, exactly. And with the new laptop, maybe I'll be able to have multiple tabs open at once, and we'll really be cooking with gas. But, so this quote unquote model, takes into account home field advantage, a number of other factors, and with that, I create a projected spread for every single game. And then I convert those spreads to win total probabilities, add it all up, and that gives me projected win totals. If I'm going negative on a team, then I'm fine with, obviously betting the under on a win total. However, if I'm feeling positive, what I would probably do rather than bet the over is try to leverage that into something a little bit better, like division winner, conference winner, something like that. Like there are only so many ways to fade a team, and betting the under on the win total is the main way to do that. But there are lots of ways to be bullish on a team. So if you're going to wrap up your money for 6 months, I'm going to shoot, if I'm pessimistic, shoot for the downside, that's fine. But if I'm optimistic, I'm going to shoot for, a significant ceiling more than just, hey, I'm laying, minus 110 and, I'm getting back $100 on the $110 bet. Like, I'm going to try to be a little bit bigger on that. So that factors into the way that I look at this, and maybe if I really dislike a team, I will look in the alternative markets and take a lower win total on the under for plus odds.
And you hit on a great point there. My biggest problem with win totals is when you're looking in that positive market, like you said, you're locking up your money for 6 months, and I'm doing it on a minus 110, plus 120, that kind of bet. I'm not getting the kind of payout that I'm looking for in some of these other futures markets. The flip side of it, of course, is it's easier to pick a yes or no than it is to pick a division winner versus a Super Bowl winner. But still, I think that's a great point about wanting to be able to look and take your positive feelings about a team and try and lay them in a form that's going to get you better value overall. And Jeff, you made a fantastic point about those in-season teams as well. Is there anyone that you're already looking to when you see the schedule and you say, oh, hey, this might be a team that has a potential in-season opportunity? What are the things they're looking for there?
Well, let's take Kansas City, for example. We'll go on the flip side here with just the absolute brutality of a schedule, where Kansas City plays 7 straight games against teams that I would not be surprised if all 7 of them are in the postseason when this is all said and done. Arizona week 1 is the weakest opponent they played to me in the first 7 games. That is brutal. Any way you slice this, that is brutal. But that's really that's the team that stood out the most, where look, it's the Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes. Could Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes and they go 5-2 in those brutal 7 games? Of course. And it blows up my preseason handicap. But that's the team I'm really eyeballing for sure, where they get off to a start, which is really bad for them, but then they get hot when their schedule gets a little bit better. And then, Tom, unfortunately for us, another team I'm going to monitor is our Jets. I mean, that schedule is just so brutal through the first 9 weeks, and then they play at New England after the bye. They're not going to be favored in a game until they see the Bears at MetLife in late November. It is possible the Jets get out 1-8, 2-7, and then have a nice, easier schedule where they get the likes of Chicago, Detroit, and Jacksonville all at home. So you could see a Jet win total collapse all the way to 3.5. And then in classic Jet fashion, to screw up the draft pick, they win 4 of their last 7 games and end up with 5 wins and end up basically right on the win total that they have right now. So that's another team. I look at teams that are going to get off to these tough starts and then be better later in the year. There's not as many this year. Like Denver was the one last year where 3 games against bad teams right away, win total goes to 10. They win the 3 games they're supposed to against bad teams, easy under. There aren't as many like that this year that stand out to me, Tom. So I'm really looking for the teams with brutal schedules earlier to bet them over when their win total crashes a lot more than it should.
Now, how about pre-flop? Before we get you out of here, Jeff, I want to know, are there any teams that you're keeping your eye on or that bets you've already placed for some season win totals here?
Yes, I'm already in on 2, and I'm probably going to go back to the well on this one. I love the Las Vegas Raiders this year. Now, there are obviously concerns about their secondary, which is pretty weak. As we know, we saw it get burnt a few times last year. They didn't do enough as much as I would have liked. But the one thing that the Raiders did, and we usually see this with teams that defy numbers, defy the analytics when they make the postseason. And the Raiders did that last year. They were not a postseason team by the numbers. But the Raiders, instead of being able to be going out there and saying, we're good enough. We made the playoffs. We don't need to change things. They went out and traded for Devontae Adams. They went out and got Chandler Jones, who's arguably the best pass rusher on the board in free agency this year. Their offensive line is, I think, going to be better than it was a year ago as well. So they went out there and made themselves better. I know they're in the toughest division on paper that we've ever seen going into a season. But for me, they're going over 500. They're making the playoffs yet again. So over 8.5 is one that I really like.
And how about anyone else here? I know that Matt has some thoughts on the Raiders. We'll get into some. We'll get into some of those with our win total drafts here. But is there any other team that you're looking at here?
Yeah. So the juice has moved here through the offseason. I like Commanders under. I have 8.5 at better juice than what is out there right now. But I think that's still, if you can even like minus 170 at FanDuel is a lot of juice to lay on a full season bet. But I know their schedule is easy, but it's Carson Wentz, guys. Like, are we really expecting Carson Wentz to go over 500 with a roster that is worse than what he had in Indy? I mean, Jonathan Taylor, if it wasn't for Cooper Kupp basically turning into Jerry Rice last year, Jonathan Taylor runs away with Offensive Player of the Year. But I just don't see it with Washington. Even 2 years ago when their defense was awesome, I know the quarterback situation was Alex Smith somehow being able to play after that grizzly leg injury, and Heineke was what they had. They still only won 7 games in a regular season. I don't see how they go over 500. So under 8.5, I think is really good, even with a lot of juice. And I like under 8. If you want to just take under 8 at a better number, I have no problem with that. This team to me is 7 wins max, even with a schedule that is pretty manageable.
Matt, any thoughts here on the commies?
I have them at 7.4 in the projection. So I'm not betting it, but I mean, I can tell you if I'm leaning in a direction, it's hard to the under, like I'm not optimistic about this team at all. I think they're one of the worst in the league.
I am.
By the way, Tom, I want to throw one more out there that I haven't bet yet that may catch you guys off here. And Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders put this as his favorite season win total in the AFC. And after going through it a little bit more, I actually kind of agree with him.
I know what you're about to say.
The Houston Texans over 4.5. Now,
yep.
I will say this. I'm not saying the Texans are going to be good. They're still going to be bad. But we see every year, we see one bad team always win, always go, oh, wait a second. How the hell did this team win 7 games with a minus 150-point differential? We see it every year. One team manages to do that every year. And I was going between them and Seattle being the 2 teams that would more than likely be the crappy team with a horrible point differential that goes over their win total. But playing in that division where you get 2 games against Jacksonville, where there's some that people that are really buying Jacksonville improving, I'm not there yet. I'm scared that Lawrence is not what we think he was when he was drafted 2 years ago. But I just have a weird feeling with Houston that Davis Mills was the second best rookie quarterback last year by the numbers, which is absurd saying, but you look at numbers, it's true. Lovie Smith is an improvement over David Culley at head coach. And if that defense, even though Derek Stingley probably walks in and becomes the best player on that defense right away, being the 3rd overall pick, their schedule is easy enough where they can pick off a few games. Like, you're telling me they can't win a game in Chicago? You're telling me they can't beat the Giants? I mean, they can get the 5 or even 6 with a horrible point differential. So I kind of like Houston over 4.5. I haven't had the fortitude to bet it yet, but I probably will have that by the time the season starts, because that number not going anywhere. People are not going to bet Houston over 4.5. I can tell you that.
I like that call quite a bit. And I will say, I have Houston power rated as one of the worst teams in the league. And still, even with that, I have them as a team to, quote unquote, bet on for 3 of the games this year. I think the market is too low on them. And when I did my projections for the win totals, I got to say, I haven't projected at 5.5, which scared me.
Go.
I don't want to bet that. I'm just going to say, like, that's what the number says, but I don't want to bet it because I feel like a team, season turns, it gets into tank mode. They're fighting for that number 1 overall pick, quote unquote, fighting for that number 1 overall pick. I just don't want to be betting on the over on a team that could be incentivized to get the under. But I mean, I'm just looking at it now, and I'm with you. Preseason, based on the what I perceive as the strength of this team and the weakness of their schedule, yeah, I could see how they go over.
Yeah, Houston getting 8 is my favorite bet of week 1 right now.
Yeah,
I mean that just again, maybe I'm buying into a little bit of my preseason thoughts on the Texans, but we've seen Indianapolis screw up that game against crappy teams plenty of times. And you're going to give me over a touchdown with a home team, no matter how bad they may look on paper. That's a bet week 1 for me, which I'm sure I'll regret by about 2:00 Eastern time on that first Sunday.
The thing I'm looking at is you look at their division. You've got 6 winnable. Your total's 4.5, and you have 6 winnable games in your division. Are you going to sweep the division? No, probably not.
No,
of course. But you're already starting out playing in the absolute turd in the punch bowl of the NFL. You have a fighting shot there. I like that 4.5 because of that. And nudge, nudge, wink, wink, might get into that in a little bit when we're talking about some of these other teams. But Jeff, thank you so much for joining us here today. Where can people find you and all the great work you're doing?
Sure. At Jeff Parles on the tweets. VSiN is where you find me. And I'll be on Betting Across America on Sunday this week. At 3:00 Eastern time. You can find me on with Gil Alexander on the numbers game as well, 10:00 Eastern time, Monday through Friday as well.
All right. Well, you tell Gil I said hello. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Real quick, I want to remind people here that we've teamed up with Run Your Pool to bring you listeners an awesome new contest for the season. To get in on the action, all you have to do is click the link in the description below or head to play.runyourpool.com/bettingpros, sign up, and you can start making your picks for week 1. We'll keep track of the leaders week to week here on the show. And in addition to bragging rights against Matt and myself, there's going to be something in it for you guys. The top 3 winners are going to receive $300 in Fanatics gift cards. We're giving $150 to first place, $100 to second, and $50 for third. You guys can go get some awesome swag with that from Fanatics. So go sign up today and get ready for week 1 at play.runyourpool.com/bettingpros. Run Your Pool is the home of competition, bringing sports fans and their social circles together to compete, connect, and make every game matter more. They offer every game type under the sun, from Pick'em to Survivor to fantasy pools. It's a one-stop shop for sports gaming with customizable features that you don't get anywhere else. So get your crew together this season at RYP in a Pick'em contest, Survivor pool. They even have squares and margin pools that you can use. Check them out at runyourpool.com today. All right, Matt. It's time for us to make some predictions here. We're going to go with a win total draft, 5 rounds. We each pick 5 teams. And at the end of the season, we can look back on how wrong we were. Now, you are the king of content, so I am going to defer to you for the first pick here. We'll go snake style, so I'll get 2-3. Who is the first team up on your board?
All right. Well, I think you're going to rue the day that you gave me the number 1 pick, because I think we both know where I'm going. And I'm imagining the pick that you would probably want at number 1, and it's the Lions. I'm taking the over, obviously not the under. I'm taking the over. The Lions in my power ratings are, one of the teams that I am higher on relative to the market that exists out there. They're the second team, the number 2 team in which I am high relative to the market. That first team, I think I'll be able to get their win total a little bit later in the draft. So I'm going with the Lions. That number is 6.5 at most books, 6 at Caesars. I'm going to take the 6.5 minus 120 at DraftKings because I've got this projected at 7.4. There's a lot that I think we should like about this team. And I did write a piece on the win totals at Betting Pros. And so you can check that out more for details, but I will say I'll give a little bit of a I guess it's not really a tease here. I'll give the breakdown here. I mean, the Lions last year 11-6 actually against the spread, overall 4-1 against the spread versus teams with winning percentages above 500. They have a top 10 offensive line, and that's being conservative. Honestly, I think it's more like a top 5, top 3 offensive line. They have improved skill positions across the board, and they have a defense that I think could be better this year, given that they added 2 pretty athletic edge rushers in Aiden Hutchinson and Josh Paschal. So over 6.5, they have the Bears. I just don't want to say just chalk that up as 2 wins right away, but they've got good matchups against the Bears, and they were a team that underperformed last year, and so they have an advantageous schedule this year, and I think the team takes a step forward. So over 6.5, the Lions, I have to say they are a chalky team. Like people are on their totals. Betting Dan Campbell to win Coach of the Year, but I don't know.
It's the Hard Knocks hype.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where the chalk hits.
Yeah, I have not watched a minute of Hard Knocks. I'm not being affected by the HBO hype machine around this team right now, but completely with you. This is the number 1 pick I had on my board too. The thing for me is the fact that they lost or tied 7 games last season by a touchdown or less. And to me, that means positive regression. Yeah. I feel like every single time that you see a team do that, the next season they are a good team. And they don't have to be a great team here. You have to get you over 7. And I love this offense. Like, you've got DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams is going to be great when he gets in that lineup. And it's not like Jared Goff can't do good things. He made a Super Bowl, for crying out loud. Combine all that. Like, when he's comfortable in the pocket, he can be a serviceable quarterback. And I think that's what you're going to get this season. Like you said, defense has some question marks, but they've got the 5th easiest strength of schedule this season too, playing the NFC and AFC East and the Jaguars.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I like the options. And the second half of their schedule is also super friendly. In the second half, you've got the Giants, Jags, Jets, Panthers, and Bears twice. Yeah, all 6 of those are winnable games right there. So if you can get 2 or 3 in the front half of the season, I feel like you're sitting pretty in the second half.
Yeah, I like it, Tom. We're on the same page there.
All right. My pick is going to be, as Jeff mentioned them, the Texans over 4.5 at even money over at DraftKings. I believe in General Mills. Yes, the Texans were horrendous early on last season, but down the stretch, nearly swept the Titans, destroyed the Chargers, and beat the Jags. Like, you had 4 wins last season, and you're telling me this team isn't improved enough to get over that this year? Their schedule isn't great, but here's something that really interested me. They're not actually that young. They have one of the oldest rosters in the league, which is weird for a rebuild, but it means they have a lot of veterans who are going to know how to play football. And you still have Brandon Cooks on that offense, and I think Mills takes a step forward in year 2. And with Lovie Smith at the helm, again, like Jeff said, you've got better coaching there. And you play the weakest division of football. You get to play Jacksonville twice. The Titans are most likely going to take a step back. And to be quite frank, I'm betting this team to win the division at 25-1.
Wow.
Is it going to hit? Probably not. But should it be 25-1? I don't think so at all. You're one Matt Ryan injury away from a wide open shot here for this team. There's no reason that it can't be done. Will it be done? Probably not. But I think they get over 4.5 games easy.
Well, there are some reasons why it won't be done, but I mean, as I mentioned earlier, my model has this as 5.5, which I don't have the fortitude to bet the over on it, but I mean, it looks like there's value there.
Yeah, that's the way I'm going with it here at even money. There are worse bets that I can make this season, and 4.5 just seems like such an easy number for them to cross over here.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do.
Yeah, so that's pick number 2. You got pick number 3.
All right, pick number 3. I'm going the other way here with another terrible team. I'm going Seahawks under 5.5 plus 120 over at DraftKings. They're my pick at plus 750 to be the worst team in football this season. First off, there is no worse quarterback situation in the NFL. If Drew Lock and Geno Smith are your answers, the question is, what is tanking? You play the AFC West and the NFC South for your out-of-division schedule. I love nothing about that except that you're going to play the Panthers towards the end of the season when Christian McCaffrey is already hurt. And Geno Smith will win the revenge game against the Jets. Just mark that down. But even if you split with the 49ers, you still need to find 2 more wins on that schedule. I guess you can beat the Giants in week 8, but the back half of the schedule is ripe for a team that is trying to tank for the first pick. If anyone is winning 2 games and 2 games only this season, I think it's the Seahawks.
All right. I don't disagree with you. I do have them projected close to their win total, but it is worth noting that I have them projected for the 3rd fewest wins overall this year. Like, I think they are a bad team. They're my number 30 power rated team. And honestly, like, if someone said they're the worst team in the league, like, I wouldn't bat an eye at that. I think their defense is going to be horrendous, and a quarterback makes or breaks your team. And the Seahawks, as you mentioned, a quarterback, quote unquote, battle between Geno Smith and Drew Lock. I mean, that is one of the worst. If it's not the worst, it's one of the worst quarterback situations in the league. No, it's the worst. It's the worst quarterback
who has
situation.
a better? No one has a worse quarterback situation.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Guys, real quick, remember when you're looking for free picks and sports betting advice, bettingpros.com has you covered with tips from over 150 experts to make it easy for you to cash out. Download the app to get sports betting alerts. You'll get notified of favorable bets based on line movements, consensus picks from the most accurate experts, and vetted systems in play. Betting Pros monitors all of the major sports books, most accurate experts, and top systems to identify the best betting opportunities. So download today in the Apple or Google Play stores.
Okay. Good picks there. All right, so I am on the board. I love this pick here. Titans under 9.5, minus 135 at FanDuel. I think, the Titans, I think they're fake. I think they got incredibly lucky on the string of wins that they had last year. So this feels like a slam dunk to me. And, everything that they have done this year signals, right, that they are in the middle of a miniature rebuild, right? They traded away wide receiver A.J. Brown, who is their most talented young player. They drafted quarterback Malik Willis, who, has significant upside and the potential to replace either this year or next year aging starter Ryan Tannehill. They cut their number 1 cornerback in Janoris Jenkins. They cut their number 2 wide receiver in Julio Jones. Running back Derrick Henry is 28 years old. He's coming off an injury-impacted campaign. His yards after contact per carry, those have dropped in each of the past 2 years. That data is from our advanced running back stats report, from 3.2 to 2.8 to 2.2 last year. Like, Derrick Henry, he feels like an unstoppable player, but he's definitely slowing down. And the offensive line, which used to be a strength of this team, is now a weakness. We have that ranked number 30 in our offensive line rankings after the offseason departures of right tackle David Quisenberry and left guard Roger Saffold. This is a bad situation for the team. And it feels like, even though they might be in a kind of miniature rebuild, next year it might look like a full-on rebuild based on how things went this year. So I'm very happy to take under 9.5.
I'm in complete agreement with you here. I thought about putting them on my board, didn't end up doing it, but I think this team is just as bit fake as you do. Treylon Burks is not going to replace A.J. Brown right away, and Derrick Henry is going to continue to slow down. I have no critiques of you. And also, I'm not betting the win total over of any team where their quarterback is probably not going to finish out the season. Like, the back half of the schedule, if they're not right in the thick of things, they're going to switch to Malik Willis and probably lose more games.
Yeah, I think that is very much within the range of outcomes. And even if that exact outcome doesn't come to pass, I mean, you can look at the writing on the wall and see that this is almost certainly Ryan Tannehill's last year with the team. And so the team does have incentive to go to Malik Willis. So yeah, very possible that happens. Okay, so Titans under 9.5. All right, next here, I know Jeff earlier talked about his optimism for the Raiders. I'm going to be the perpetual wet blanket and say it does not happen for the Raiders. I'm going under 8.5 on their win total. Man, they have the 3rd toughest strength of schedule if you just add up all of the win totals of the teams that they are playing this year. So, I mean, we know that they are in a very tough division, but I mean, they have one of the toughest schedules this year. And in terms of their schedule, some of the actual mechanics of the schedule, they have a really unforgiving string of games in weeks 8 through 14. And in that stretch, they play 5 of 7 games away. So weeks 8 and 9, they travel east for back-to-back road games at the Saints and the Jags. Both of those games kick off at 1 p.m. Eastern. So that's not a great situation. They have a week 10 home game against the Colts. Like, that's not a terribly easy game. And then they have another set of back-to-back road games at the Broncos, so playing at elevation in a divisional rematch, and then at the Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks, I think they're one of the worst teams in the league, but playing in Seattle against the Seahawks coming off of their bye, that's not a great situation to be in. And then after that, weeks 13 and 14, they have consecutive games against the 2 LA teams, the Rams and the Chargers, both of which have top 6 power ratings. So I think the Raiders could easily go 2-5 in that stretch. And that's before their final 4 games of the season, when they play the Patriots, Steelers, 49ers, and Chiefs. Like, I could see them losing 2 or 3 of those games. And that's just like a little more than half of the season. Like, that doesn't take into account anything that happens in the first half. So I am very much on the under here. I mean, the Raiders, like, I get the enthusiasm around the team, but I am very happy to be taking the under here. And it's plus 110 at DraftKings and Caesars.
Oh, Matt. I'm going against you here. I'm going with the Raider Nation, my friend. I think the way I look at this team, yes, the schedule is not easy, but of the teams with a new head coach this year, I like Josh McDaniels the most. I think that he's learned a lot from the disaster in Denver. I think he's learned a lot going back under Belichick. I've liked everything that I'm seeing from this team out of camp. And then I just look at the weapons they have. Quite frankly, I am considering making a bet on them to win the division. The offensive line worries me still. Alex Leatherwood does not look like he really has it. He did pop off in the Charity Raiders Knights softball game, and he's a very cool guy to talk to. But I don't really trust this O-line right now, and the secondary still has problems. But I think they're going to have one of the best D-lines in football. You got Max Crosby and Chandler Jones on the edges there. That's going to be very exciting to see. And then as far as the offense goes, you bring in the best receiver in football. You still have Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. And then your running back weapons in Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about what that team's going to be able to do on offense. Derek Carr was on track, in my opinion, to be MVP last season until you had to deal with you had to deal with so much for that team. The John Gruden fiasco, Henry Ruggs killing someone. Like, once Darren Waller got hurt and Ruggs was in prison, yeah, of course the offense is going to go downhill there. But Derek Carr was on pace to throw for above 5,000 yards last season before that slowdown. Now you add in Devontae Adams, who he does have that natural chemistry with, into that offense. I think that Carr is going to be right up there as a top 5 quarterback this season. And I think that we're going to see some really electric games from this team.
Tom, if we reunited you with someone that you played flag football with 9 years ago, do you think there would be any residual chemistry?
What I've seen in camp looks pretty good.
All right. I mean, Devontae Adams, obviously the best wide receiver in the league. Great addition, but he's taking a step down, like obvious step down, both at quarterback and, I'm not going to say a play caller, but we just have to see what the Josh McDaniels offense looks like in a new environment.
But he's also entering a better offense. As far as the guys around him, I think that are his numbers going to go down this season? Totally. But that's also because there are more targets and more mouths to feed in that offense. Whereas, let's face it, you knew if Rodgers was throwing the football, it was most likely going to Adams. Now, not so much the case. And I think it's going to be harder for teams to defend him because of it.
Yeah, I think if you ask people who don't live in Las Vegas or Oakland or wherever it is that they live, but they just happen to be Raiders fans, if you ask just random people, who has the better offense, the Packers or the Raiders? Probably the Packers.
I look, quarterback, yes. Every other position, running back, yeah, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are a better tandem there. But in terms of the passing game, you have more weapons. There is more to cover with the Raiders. No one was afraid of Alan Lazard like they are of Darren Waller.
No, I mean, you're not wrong about that part, but I think if you have the better quarterback, you probably have the better passing game.
I'm interested to see what happens, but I think this team is going to be pretty dang good.
I mean, Tom, if you want, go head to head against me. Bet the over. You can bet Raiders over 8.5.
I actually did consider it. I was thinking about putting it as one of my picks here, especially because I needed to sub something out after you took the Lions. But instead, I'm going to go in a different direction that plenty of people are also probably going to disagree with. I'm going to take in San Francisco under 10 wins at -110 here on DraftKings. The 49ers are not a good football team. You want to talk about a team that luck boxed their way last season? The Titans, yeah, they did. But the 49ers were the luckiest of luck box teams to get to the NFC Championship game. They had no business being there. You had Jimmy G at quarterback who actively was trying to lose you games, I'm convinced. That team won games in spite of their quarterback play last season. Now you have Trey and out instead. People talk about how Zach Wilson had a cupcake schedule in college. Trey Lance sure had to deal with some hard competition at North Dakota State. This guy was so bad as a rookie, he couldn't beat out Jimmy G, a guy who literally no one wants. I don't care that you have Deebo Samuel. George Kittle is a year older. Brandon Ayuk maybe gets back into the fold. And as far as schedule, I simply don't see this team winning 10 games. Yes, the defense is going to be good. I think good enough to win 6 games, 7 games. But I think the Bears can come out and surprise them in week 1 in Chicago. You play the AFC West, which could easily be 4 losses right there. Then you play the NFC South, which, yes, it's a mixed bag. You get the Saints and Bucks. Those are going to be tough games. I'm not saying this team wins 2 games, but 10 with a quarterback who, for all intents and purposes, is a rookie. You talk about teams like the Bengals win totals at 9.5. People really think that they're going to regress harder than the 49ers this year. I don't see it. I think that this is a 7-win team, 8 wins max. 10, I'm taking under all day.
Wow. The heat from thinking that the Bears beat the 49ers and that maybe they win 6 or 7. I don't know. I can see, I'll just say, teasing week 1. Yeah, I can see betting on the Bears in week 1 against the 49ers. I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the touchdown with them.
Yeah. Bears at home. I see it.
Yeah.
Bears beating them. I don't see it. I don't think there's a lot that's wrong with the analysis. I just wouldn't bet it. I have them projected for 9.9. So a smidge under the total of 10, but I'm basically right there with the total. I do think that Trey Lance is going to end up being a better quarterback than people expect.
I think he's trash.
Yeah. We'll see. He very well could be. I think he's, to go back in the time machine, I think he's Steve McNair. I think that's the type of player he is. I
mean, that's pretty big to be Steve McNair.
Yeah, I mean, it is. But, he's got the draft capital. He's comparable with
He only has the draft capital because Shanahan got overruled. Shanahan wanted Mac Jones.
I'm not going to disagree with you there. I think we know how I feel about that. Yeah, I think Mac Jones was the pick. And honestly, maybe he should have been the pick. But I still think with the playmakers, with the scheme, with his just overall ability, yeah, I think Trey Lance is okay. I've got to bet. In fact, when I was in Vegas, Tom, in February after the Super Bowl, I did make a bet on Trey Lance 80-1 to be MVP. So we will see how that goes. I guess I'm officially invested in Lance, but yeah.
I seem to recall a similar Jalen Hurts bet last year.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Jalen Hurts wasn't terrible.
Better suited for this year. Like this year now, I think you have a real good conversation to be had about Jalen Hurts there. But I am not going to take the Eagles as my next team here. I did think about it, though. That's a win total. If we were to do some rapid fire, I'd definitely be going Eagles over. But I'm going to take the Saints over 8.5 at -105. I know Sean Payton is gone, but it's not like this team doesn't have continuity in the program here. They're not changing things up. Go back and watch Jameis's starts last season. 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in the 7 games he played before getting hurt. And his receivers last year were bad. Like this guy, first off, is never going to have a 30-30 campaign again. He has fixed a lot of that part of his game. And his receivers, remember when Marquez Callaway was the next big thing? They were dropping passes all over the place last year. This year, Michael Thomas is back. Jarvis Landry still has something in the tank. He looks healthy. And you have Chris Olave, who's expected to be a contributor immediately. And I don't know that Alvin Kamara gets suspended this year. The way the NFL's slow playing this, it might not be until next season. And even then, I still think that they could survive without him for a few games. But you boast the 9th easiest strength of schedule. You get to play the Falcons and Panthers twice. And for some reason, the Saints always have Tampa Brady's number anyway. You play the NFC West, which I believe is much weaker than it used to be. And you have the AFC North, which admittedly means you run into the Ravens and the Bengals. But it's not a terrible schedule. With the NFC as weak as it is right now, there's no reason the Saints can't be a playoff team. I see 9-10 wins as a real possibility here when I look at the schedule.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I have them projected for 8.6. So, right around that win total. If I had to take a side, I would, probably lean over just because that's where my number is indicating. One thing that gives me a little bit of pause about Jameis Winston, and this is more, kind of thinking week to week and against the spread. This guy is 8-17-1 against the spread as a favorite. Like, he's just like an underdog. Fine. That's the situation to bet on Jameis. But as a favorite, the dude has just historically crumbled. And that just kind of makes me a little pessimistic about taking the over on the win total of someone like that.
I think my thing is that we're looking at a really different Jameis than the Jameis that we had in Tampa, where we got to see most of his sample size here. I genuinely think Sean Payton and Drew Brees had a real effect on this guy. And I know he's one of the favorites to win comeback player of the year. Honestly, I'm kind of looking around at that 80-1 price on MVP.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I mean, he does have the best okay, not the best receiver unit, but like a very, I think, underappreciated receiver unit, because Michael Thomas, if he comes back healthy, he's a real number one wide receiver. You have Chris Olave as a guy who can play inside and play outside and stretch the field. And then you got Jarvis Landry as, just like a very strong, competent number 3 receiver. So that is all very good. And the offensive line's pretty good too.
I'm just excited to see Michael Thomas with a quarterback who can throw more than 5 yards. I love Drew Brees, one of my all-time favorite players. I think he's up there on the wall somewhere behind me, but I'm excited to see Michael Thomas with a vertical arm here.
All right, the disrespect. All right, so you have 49ers and Saints. That means I am up at number 8, and I teased this earlier. I'm taking the Chiefs. They are the team that I am the highest on relative to the market right now. And, that feels a little bit chalky, but whatever. I don't care. I think too many people are overweighting the impact of Tyreek Hill being gone. And it's not just Tyreek Hill. It's our guy, Byron Pringle, who is also gone, and Demarcus Robinson. But so really, it is a total rebuild of the wide receiver room there. But I really like Juju as the guy who can operate in the middle of the field. I like Marquez Valdes-Scantling as the field stretcher, not like a one-for-one substitute of Tyreek Hill, but he can do some of the field stretching things that the offense relied on, from Tyreek. And then, Sky Moore as I think a upside potential number 1 receiver in that offense. Not to mention you've got Travis Kelce there, Isaiah Pacheco as a guy who, might be the number 2, but maybe he ends up becoming the number 1 running back in that offense. The offensive line is pretty good. I don't know. I'm just going to say, I trust Andy Reid and I trust Patrick Mahomes. That is sort of like the heart of what all of this boils down to. But Andy Reid historically has outperformed expectations, like the win total expectations in Kansas City. And I mean, I think 9 years now, he's been the head coach, and only twice have they not gone over 10.5 wins. So I know, tough division. That's fine. They're still the Chiefs, and they still have, I think, in my opinion here, but the best quarterback in the league. I still think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. So best head coach in the league, best quarterback in the league. Yeah, I'll go over 10.5. I have this projected at 11.1. That's the not quite the highest win total projection that I have, but it's up there.
I'd probably say second best quarterback behind Mitch Trubisky, but that's just splitting hairs. They're 1 and 2. They're so close for everybody. I I'm one of those people that's definitely really down on the Chiefs. And then I look at that win total at 10.5 and I go, do I really see this team only winning 9 games? And then I also look at that first preseason game, those couple of drives that we saw when Mahomes was already throwing no-look passes and stuff. And I just started going to myself, ooh, they still look really good. At 10.5, I can't bet under that. I'd have to go over it. My fears with them are like you talked about, this receiving core. They're going to miss Tyreek Hill. If Travis Kelce gets hurt, this guy's the same age as Gronk. And it's entirely possible that he starts slowing down because that has to happen at some point. But all of a sudden you start looking around that receiver room and going, okay, well, Juju doesn't really have to be the guy here in this offense. Sky Moore, we know that Derek Brown is so high on him, and that's starting to rub off. You can only listen to so many times he talks about him before you start agreeing with it. And yeah, it's still Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I think I have to agree with you here. I still think that the Raiders are going to be right up there with them, but I think that they are probably still the best team in that division, and they're going to end up winning it for sure.
Yeah, and I'll say, I know it feels so chalky to be like, oh, I'm taking the Chiefs over 10.5 win,
But the number is so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fair number. By the way, -115 at FanDuel. And I'll just say, I tend not to bet overs in the win total market because it's an inflated market. So if you added up all of the consensus win totals that we have in our betting pros, our betting pros page, the odds page for team futures, it's 273.5 wins, and there are only 272 games in the regular season. So it's an inflated market, which means there tends to be value on the under. So you really have to like an over, in my opinion, to bet the over. But I mean, I still like it. Patrick Mahomes, as bad as people thought Patrick Mahomes was playing at the beginning of last year, the Chiefs were still number 1 overall in offensive success rate. They're still an incredible offense. So yeah, I will easily take them there. One team I am fading though, up near the top, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have the highest win total, or tied with the Bills for the highest win total on the slate. 11.5. I will go under that, -125 at FanDuel and PointsBet. I like the Bucs in general. I have them as a top 4 team in my power ratings, but this season, I mean, they have a number of obstacles that they have to overcome. Bruce Arians, their head coach, he's gone. Wide receiver Antonio Brown, tight end Rob Gronkowski, edge rusher Jason Pierre-Paul, defensive tackle and Ndamukong Suh, all of those guys, pretty important to the team over the past couple of years. They are all gone. They also have injuries, right? Number 2 wide receiver, Chris Godwin, he's probably not going to be ready for week 1. Even if he is active, I don't think we should expect him to be his full Godwin self, given the ACL injury that he suffered, last year in December. And I'd say even more importantly than that, center Ryan Jansen, he suffered what might be a season-ending knee injury in training camp. And so that means if he's out, that the entire interior of the offensive line is going to have 3 new starters, because left guard Ali Marpet, he retired. Right guard Alex Kappa, he left for free agency. And so Tom Brady might have more interior pressure. And that's the one thing in Brady's career. If you could point to what's the one thing that could bring Tom Brady down, it is interior pressure. And so a whole new offensive line in the interior, that feels like the kind of thing that could make Brady regress a little bit. And he's 45 years old. I don't want to bet against Brady, but at some point,
at some point, there's a cliff, right?
Yeah. I mean, time is undefeated.
I feel like time was undefeated. Brady at this point has beaten time. I don't care if it actually comes to fruition. Chalk that up as a W for him. I feel like we're going to be saying the same thing in 10 years when he's still throwing touchdowns at 55, though.
Well, I mean, let's hope. I have him on my dynasty league of record, but 11.5, given all those things that I laid out, that just feels really aggressive. So I will take the under there. I have that projected for 10.9. So I will, I'll take the under there.
I have a hard time disagreeing with you. Yes, Tom Brady is such a great mobile threat who can escape that interior pressure, but I still think that there are going to be a lot of problems right there. Yeah. And 11 wins is a lot for a football team in the NFL.
It is a lot. And by the way, it correlates with your Saints over 8.5. So, if you're thinking you like the Saints, I'm thinking I dislike the Buccaneers. We're a little bit on the same page.
All right, my last team here, there are a couple ways I could have gone with this. I really hate the Broncos this season. I think they're a 6-win team. I know that's another hot take, but Russell Wilson's moving into, I had to drop it in here. Russell Wilson is going to a worse offense. That's a fact. The defense isn't necessarily a top 10 unit. You look at that unit, they don't scream top 10 to me. They have a couple good pieces, but they also have a couple pieces who are starting to show their age. Bradley Chubb was not that great last year. Patrick Surtain, I think, is going to be a great corner in this league for a long time. But overall, I think that unit is a lot shakier, and I think they're definitely the fourth best team in that division. And Russell Wilson's a year older too. And now he's got to learn a new offense. Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are not DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They are a downgrade. I don't see that as a hot take there. But that's not the team I'm going to go with here. I had to take my own Jets under 6, and I can find the total at 6.5. You can find the total at 6 in some places with a little more money here. The Jets under 6 even money at Circa is where I have them, because you can find them at 5.5 most spots, not 6.5. So 6 is the best number I can find on this. And I don't even actually have any notes written up for this because I have been thinking about it for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Zach Wilson, as of yesterday, the reports are that his meniscus is okay. He's going to miss week 1, but it's not a season-ending injury. That is great news for this under. I was very worried that Zach was going to be out for the entire season, and we would therefore have to go through next season of suffering through more Zach Wilson before moving on. And instead, now we can have him suck now and move on to the next quarterback a year sooner. I think that's really important for this team. But you look at this schedule here. You have the Ravens week 1, the Browns. Okay, that's winnable. The Bengals, the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Packers, the Broncos, the Patriots, the Bills, and then you get to your week 10 bye. That's a 1-8 team, like, maximum going into that bye. I'm not even that high on the Dolphins. I don't think they're going to be fantastic, but I don't see a single game there outside of the Browns that's really winnable. And at that point, you're in full-on tank mode. Now, you do have, after you get out of the bye, you have that Patriots game. Then you play the Bears at home. We'll see. I could see Justin Fields running rampant on this team by that point. Then you have the Vikings that in Minnesota. That's a loss. Then you go to Buffalo. I'm sure that's an easy dub. And then you start the last 4 games here, which is the only time that we're going to get the seat's going to get a little warm. If they have 2 or 3 wins going into that home stretch, it is prime Jets mess up the season's draft pick territory. You got the Lions, you got the Jaguars, you got the Seahawks, and you got the Dolphins. At least you play the Seahawks in Seattle. You play the Jaguars and Lions at home. Those are going to be winnable games to mess up the draft record, but I still don't think you're getting near 6 wins here. The hype around this team is not deserved. Yes, I like a lot of the pieces they're putting in place, but at the end of the day, it comes down to quarterback, and I don't think Zach Wilson's the guy.
Yeah, this is a very Tom pick. It makes me think of when I bet against the Cowboys every week last year and hated my life because of it.
Yeah, but the difference is you hated your life because you were more pissed about the bets. If the Jets win 8 games this season, that means Zach Wilson might be legit, and I am thrilled. I am just fine losing the bet if the team's outlook looks bright.
Yeah, I have this at 5.8. So, I'm a little bit to the under. I don't think there's significant value there. I honestly think that, you talked about that tough stretch of games that they have. So they head into the week 10 bye off of a really brutal stretch, right? Week 6 and 7, back-to-back games at the Packers and Broncos. Both of those teams, I think, have elite home field advantages. And then they host the Patriots and the Bills. I mean, I think they're going to lose both of those games. They could lose all of those games by double-digit points. I think, though, coming out of the bye, because of how bad they might look entering the bye, they might offer some against the spread betting value. I hate to say that because I never want to be betting on the Jets, but we talked with Jeff earlier. If we're thinking about points in the schedule where there might be some betting value on teams, the Jets coming out of the week 10 bye looking like one of the worst teams in the league, playing 3 of 4 away. they might offer a little bit of value there, but it's not like I'm going to want to be betting that.
Yeah, I agree on some of those. The game after the bye is the Patriots, though, and we're going to lose that by 40 points.
Yeah.
Bill
Sorry,
Belichick sees the Jets on the schedule, and he goes, all right, especially at that point, it is time to stomp them while they're down.
Yeah, gonna be a tough season there.
Yeah, well, it's not like I'm not used to it.
All right, so let's do a quick recap here, right?
Yes. So I've got, let's see, let me pull it up here. I've got the Texans over 4.5, the Seahawks under 5.5, 49ers under 10, Saints over 8.5, and the Jets under 6.
All right, and I have the Lions over 6.5. I'm taking over 6.5. The Titans under 9.5. The Raiders under 8.5. The Chiefs over 10.5, and the Buccaneers under 11.5.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here then, Matt. May the best man win. I'll set a calendar reminder for this for the end of the season, but we've got plenty of more exciting things to talk about. Guys, next week's going to be another banger. We've got an entire season to look forward to here. Don't forget to head to runyourpool.com/bettingpros. Join our pick'em contest and get ready for week 1 to go head to head against us. I'm coming for that $150 Fanatics gift card because if I don't know if I even can win it, but if I am, I'm getting Matt the worst possible jersey I can think of with it. But in the meantime, that is going to do it for us here. Follow me on Twitter at TV at Work. You can find Matt at Matt F. the Oracle. And as always, head on over to bettingpros.com. Follow them on Twitter at bettingpros. Guys, best of luck this season. Let's cash some tickets.
I'm looking forward to that Zach Wilson jersey.